The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time.
One quiet moment inside the White House briefing room suddenly turned into a mystery no one saw coming. Out of nowhere, Melania Trump stepped forward to publicly deny any connection to Jeffrey Epstein, a topic even Donald Trump had been urging everyone to move past. Reporters weren't just surprised, they were confused. Some said the statement felt completely out of left field, with no warning, no buildup, and no clear reason for the timing. And within hours, journalists started asking a question that still hasn't been fully answered. Why did she choose that exact moment to speak? Because as soon as the cameras turned off, old photos, resurfaced emails, and conflicting explanations began raising even more questions than the statement solved. And that's where the story really starts. The statement itself caught Washington completely off guard. Melania Trump stepped forward to firmly deny ever having a personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, insisting she had only crossed paths with them at large social gatherings years ago. She also made it clear she was never introduced to Donald Trump through Epstein, a claim that immediately drew attention because it addressed a rumor many viewers hadn't even heard before. What made the moment even more unusual was how rare it is for her to step forward publicly on controversy at all. Instead of letting aides handle the situation, she delivered the message herself, calling the circulating claims false and urging lawmakers to focus attention on victims rather than speculation about her past. For someone known for staying largely out of political storms, the decision to speak directly felt deliberate and unusually urgent. But almost immediately after the statement aired, reporters weren't debating what she said. They were trying to figure out something else entirely. Who inside the White House even knew it was coming? That question became even more confusing when reporters tried to confirm whether Donald Trump even knew the statement was happening before it aired. One television host said the president told her directly he didn't know anything about the announcement ahead of time, a response that immediately raised eyebrows across Washington. For something this sensitive, that kind of surprise is unusual. Then things got even murkier. A spokesperson later suggested he did know she planned to speak, but it wasn't clear whether he understood what the statement would focus on. That contradiction only fueled speculation that the move may have come together quickly behind the scenes, or possibly faster than expected. And once those mixed signals started circulating, reporters shifted their attention to an even bigger mystery. Why make a statement at that exact moment when the White House was trying to move attention somewhere else entirely? That's when the timing of the statement started raising even more questions. Melania Trump chose to speak just as the White House was reportedly trying to move past renewed discussions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, not bring attention back to it. Even reporters from outlets usually well connected to administration messaging admitted they couldn't explain why the moment had been chosen. The confusion deepened because Washington was already focused on major international developments, making the sudden shift back to this older controversy feel unexpected. One senior advisor offered only a short explanation, saying she spoke now because enough is enough, but didn't clarify what exactly had triggered the decision. That vague response only fueled speculation that the statement might have been reacting to something behind the scenes, or possibly something people hadn't seen yet. And once journalists started asking whether she was responding to something about to surface, attention quickly turned to images from the past that suddenly began circulating again. Then the photos started circulating again, and they immediately pulled the story in a new direction. Images from a 2000 event at Mar-a-Lago showed Melania Trump appearing at the same gathering as Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Supporters pointed out these were large social events with many guests, but critics argued the images still raised questions about how often their circles overlapped. Another photo from a high-profile Dolce & Gabbana event in New York showed her alongside Maxwell again, this time with Donald Trump and Naomi Campbell also present. The pictures themselves weren't new, but their sudden return to headlines gave the impression that old connections were being re-examined in real time. And just as people began debating what those images actually meant, another detail from the early 2000s quietly resurfaced, one that added a very different layer to the conversation. That different layer came from something far less visible than photographs, an old email exchange that suddenly found its way back into public discussion. Melania Trump had previously been linked to a 2002 message involving Ghislaine Maxwell, written in a friendly tone and signed off with "Love Melania." On its own, the message sounded casual, almost routine for social acquaintances at the time. But what made it explosive was the context around it. The exchange reportedly referenced a positive media piece about Jeffrey Epstein, which critics argued showed at least some familiarity with his social world, even if indirectly. Supporters pushed back, saying it reflected nothing more than polite correspondence during a large and overlapping New York social scene in the early 2000s. When Maxwell replied warmly, using familiar language in return, the tone of the exchange only deepened public curiosity rather than settling it. And just when it seemed like the story couldn't get more complicated, viewers began focusing on something else, a small on-camera moment during the statement that quickly went viral for all the wrong reasons. Then came a moment so small that it might have been missed entirely, if the internet hadn't caught it within minutes. While delivering her statement, Melania Trump appeared to stumble over a word, reading trivial in a way some viewers interpreted as a slip, instantly turning a formal address into a viral talking point. On its own, it wasn't a major incident. But in a story already surrounded by speculation about timing, intent, and hidden context, even the smallest detail suddenly felt amplified. Clips of the moment spread quickly, with people dissecting whether it was simply nerves, misreading a prepared text, or something more telling about how rushed or pressured the statement might have been. Supporters dismissed it as an overblown distraction, while critics pointed to it as another sign that the appearance wasn't as polished or routine as it should have been. And as that clip dominated online discussion, attention shifted again, this time away from the speech itself and toward a far bigger question people in Washington were quietly starting to ask behind closed doors. What exactly triggered this entire moment in the first place? That question is exactly what started driving quieter conversations inside media circles. Reporters and analysts began floating a theory that the statement wasn't just a response to old rumors, but possibly an attempt to get ahead of something else entirely. Melania Trump publicly addressing her past connections to Jeffrey Epstein felt, to some observers, less like a routine clarification and more like a preemptive move in a story that might not be finished yet. Some journalists pointed out that the White House had been dealing with multiple overlapping pressures at the time, and that sudden, tightly timed messaging like this sometimes signals internal concern about upcoming disclosures or renewed media cycles. Others were more cautious, stressing that there was no confirmed evidence of any imminent revelation.
For years
Only
now.
the fact that the timing felt
Be
unusual enough
cautious
to raise
about
questions.
what you believe.
Still, the idea
These
spread because it
images
fit a
and
familiar
stories
Washington
are
pattern.
completely false.
When a long-dormant controversy suddenly gets
I'm not a
revisited in a very
witness
public
or
way,
a name witness
it often means
in
someone,
connection with
somewhere,
any of
is reacting to
Epstein's
something the
crimes.
public hasn't seen yet.
My name has
And that
never appeared
possibility
in
led
court
straight into the
documents,
final and most uncomfortable
depositions,
question of all.
victim
Whether this
statements,
statement truly closed
or
the issue,
FBI
or whether it had
interviews
just reopened
surrounding
it in a much
the
bigger way
Epstein
than
matter.
before. In the end, the statement from Melania Trump didn't calm the conversation around her past connections to Jeffrey Epstein. It reignited it. What was meant to be a clear denial
from the
and
White
a line
House
drawn
saying
under
point
old
blank that the
speculation
Epstein
instead
lies
became the
about her
spark for
need to
even more
stop,
questions,
and laying out
especially as
a
reporters
list of
struggled to
things she says she
reconcile
has never
conflicting
been
accounts,
associated with
unusual
when it
timing,
relates to Jeffrey
and
Epstein or
resurfaced
Ghislaine
details from
Maxwell.
decades
Let's
ago.
bring in our White House
Even
correspondent,
inside
Karen Travers, who's
Washington,
been
the
listening.
reaction
Karen,
never
a lot
fully
of questions
settled
about
into
what
a single
exactly
narrative.
prompted this from
Some
the First
saw it
Lady
as
and
a
what she's referring
straightforward
to
attempt
here.
to shut down
of course, we're
recycled
asking
rumors.
those questions, Elizabeth.
Others viewed it as a carefully timed intervention in a story that still has unresolved edges. And with mixed signals coming from different spokespeople, even basic questions about coordination and intent remained unanswered. What lingers now isn't a conclusion, it's uncertainty. Because the more people revisit the photos, the emails, and the timing, the more the story resists a clean explanation. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air. Was this really the end of the conversation, or just the moment it started all over again?